Hello again, I am Blunty, still riding high on the newly refreshed hype of Monster Hunter Wilds thanks to the two new trailers we got via the PlayStation State of Play and Summer Games Fest streaming events over the last couple of weeks. The game itself won't be here till early 2025, insert small whimper of impatience, but this pocket of time is when the Monster Hunter community gets all kind of dopey for all kinds of speculation and questions and propositions about what the game could be. Because we know just enough for our imaginations to go wild, but not enough for any of us to meaningfully confirm or dismiss the likelihood of any of it, really. And speculation like this can be really fun, even if it's about unlikely stuff, which brings me to the point of this video and to a Reddit post from a few days ago that I scrolled past that rang a bell in my mind. Is anyone else hoping for a throwable weapon to be introduced? Well, for a start, we already have throwable weapons in the forms of kunai and whatnot, but we know what they meant. They meant main weapon. What follows, though, is a mostly stupid idea, in my opinion. Specifically, I think the execution of the mechanics is kind of dumb, and how they've presented it, but it did make me remember something from another game. A game heavily inspired by Monster Hunter. It does have a throwable weapon mechanic that I think would be fun in Monster Hunter. But let's start with the OP's post for some frame of reference here. My main idea is a spear you can throw and lodge into the monster. While lodged in a monster, the spear builds up charge, but you are left defenseless. At any moment you can press a button which sort of reactivates the spear, dislodging it. This causes it to fly through the monster into the ground, expending all built-up charges damage on the spot where it had been lodged. Then you have to avoid the monster as you go retrieve the spear. This would make positioning a lot more important compared to other weapons. No, it wouldn't. And the need to retrieve the weapon would also add an interesting cat-and-mouse phase to the attack cycle. Yes, it would. And that's already been done, which is what I'm going to be talking about. Now, this idea, as presented, is kind of clumsy and overcomplicated and awkward and kind of all over the place. I feel like this was just something that spilled out of the brain. They didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it or considering it or working through some variations of it or anything. It's kind of like a much dumber, slower version of sticky ammo, the way they described it, kind of. But, like I said, it reminded me of a weapon mechanic we have seen before in a Monster Hunter-style game, and it was quite a lot of fun. Specifically, I'm talking about Dauntless, which is what you're seeing on screen right now if you're not familiar with it. It's a free-to-play game that I started playing back when it was still in beta, back in 2018. And the weapon I'm referring to is the axe, which in Monster Hunter terms feels mechanically closest to the greatsword. It has a similar three-stage charge cycle and things like that. But it's also a little bit like the charge blade. Yeah, closest to the greatsword, except with a lot more mobility, because this entire game is just a lot faster than Monster Hunter tends to be. And the axe is one of the weapons I mained back when I still played Dauntless regularly, and I focused several builds around it. And fun little fact, by the way, I played Dauntless before Monster Hunter proper ever got its hooks into me properly. And as you can see up there, my character still rocks the title of Slayer of the Queen, something only people who suffered the server issues in the first week of the beta were awarded. That's my OG bling right there, so no big deal. Like I said, Dauntless is a free-to-play co-op action RPG game, obviously heavily inspired by Monster Hunter. It's available for PC, for Switch, for PS4, for PS5, Xboxes, and unlike Monster Hunter, it also has had seamless cross-play and even cross-platform save since day one of being a multi-platform title. Capcom? Cough? Back when it was a little higher profile, it was also a frequent target of derision and pettiness from those who consider themselves hardcore Monster Hunter fans. They love to make fun of Dauntless, but fact is, despite being a lot more streamlined and faster and a lot more arcadey than Monster Hunter is, which is part of why they didn't like it, it wasn't as serious as Monster Hunter, it is both fun and quite challenging in its own way. You get to the later hunts and they can be quite challenging indeed. And when I went back to it to get footage for this very video, I was kind of surprised to see the player community still quite active and quite healthy. But in any case, as you've been seeing in my very rusty gameplay here, sorry about that for any Dauntless players. I know I'm not playing very well, you can tell. Other people might not be able to tell how badly I'm doing, but you can. I am very out of practice. It's been a long while since I last dropped into Dauntless, and just readjusting to the control scheme, even with the optional control scheme that brings it closer to Monster Hunter controls. But as you can see, one of the core abilities for the axe in Dauntless is being able to hurl the damn thing across the damn field, and it feels awesome. It looks cool, it sounds cool, and it does cool things. And it's got some pretty fun mechanics tied into it. It does a big smack of damage if you hit the monster, especially on the face. In fact, depending on the special you have slotted, the throw does different things. At a base level, the one you start with, basically, it does a base set amount of damage on a hit, and you can recall the axe remotely, and if it hits the monster on the way back, it does a much larger amount of damage. Another option, which is what I have active in this gameplay, doesn't include the active recall, but does do a significantly higher amount of damage on the hit, including a large amount of stun, and it gains a chunk of weapon charge meter on hit as well. And my favourite part of this playstyle is, if you catch the axe on its return bounce before it lands, you get an even larger amount of meter boosted. So the whole dance of this is just managing that properly. Lastly, the third playstyle does less damage per hit, but still includes the active catching mechanic, except this time you can throw it immediately again after each successful catch without having to wait for the meter, and chain this up to 3 times, doing more and more and more damage for each successful catch and subsequent hit. And the balance to all of this is, if you miss the monster with your throw, the axe doesn't return, and instead just embeds itself in the ground where it lands, and you have to run over to it unarmed and vulnerable to retrieve it before you can attack the monster again. It is, frankly, a damn fun playstyle, and when you get good at it, when you can get really good at it, as I used to be, it can feel tremendously satisfying and powerful, especially when you get good at using it for ranged interrupts, or in the old parlance of the game, to boop a monster during the build-up to a large move and knock it down onto the ground, ready for everyone to rush in and just pour on the damage. And it's not hard to see a very similar approach working really well for at least a few weapons in Monster Hunter. The hammer, of course, is the most obvious, with Thor's Mjolnir being a thing people are now familiar with thanks to the Marvel movies. Imagine hurling your hammer out of a charged spin, literally like, well, the Olympic hammer throw event. Massive ranged bonk damage on a monster, with the risk being, of course, you have to go and retrieve your weapon if you miss. How about a throw and return mechanic on the insect glaive, where you toss the whole weapon as a spear for slicing damage, or even piercing damage perhaps, and then have the insect fling it back to you, and on successful catch of the returning glaive, you get a refresh for your extract timers. What about a shield throw on the charge blade, leaving you very vulnerable and with a very limited offensive moveset, having only the sword in your hand, but in return, being able to deliver a good amount of blunt damage with the thrown shield, and on catching it, Captain America style of course, getting a charge meter boost. Leave your own thoughts in the down below about how a throwing mechanic could work well with your favourite weapon. Now, frankly, I doubt we'll see this stuff in Wilds. I doubt it very heavily. I'd be stunned and shocked if we got throwable weapons in Monster Hunter with Wilds, frankly. But while we wait for real information about how the game actually plays and what new mechanics it has and what new movesets it has and what playstyles we will have available to us, it's fun to speculate about what-ifs. And that makes a trilogy of Marvel references. Nice. Nailed it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this has sparked some imagination in you for today. I am Blunty. Thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above there, and I will catch you next time.